Science. Welcome back to our e-learning platform. In previous video, we have seen the stack and the associated operations with the stack. The link of the previous video is available in the description box. Please check it. Now, in this video, we are going to see the new point, the input-output organization of the computer system. Let's see first what is input-output subsystem. The input-output subsystems of a computer provides an efficient mode of communication between the central system and the outside environment. It handles all the input-output operations of the computer system. We know that in a computer system there are many components connected with each other. Some components are input components and some components are output components. These are connected with the CPU by the bus, okay, or the wires. For this connection or for this interface, we require the input output interface module, okay. Here in this diagram also we can see the CPU and memory are connected with memory, keyboard, hard disk, like printer, scanner, like input output devices through the interfaces. And all these interfaces are connected with CPU and memory through three types of buses: address bus, data bus, and control bus. I hope you all understand this block diagram. Let's see once again. The CPU and memory all are connected with the input output devices through the interface. These interfaces are available in the modules. Okay, and these are connected with CPU and memory through address bus, data bus, and control bus. I hope you all understand what is the input output subsystem. Now let's see the basic details about what is the input output or peripherals. First, see what is the peripheral devices. Input output devices that are connected to the computer are called as peripheral devices. That means all the other hardware devices which are connected with the computer or the processor is known as the peripheral devices. And as the name implies, the device which is used to input data into processor are known as input peripheral, while the devices which are used to read data from the processor is known as the output peripherals. Let's see, the input output devices or the peripheral devices are designed to read information into or out of a memory unit upon command from the CPU and are considered to be a part of computer system. These devices are called as peripherals. For example, keyboard, display units, and printers are the common peripheral devices. The peripheral devices are mainly of three types. The three types are: first one is input peripheral, output peripheral, and third one is input output peripheral. Let's see one by one what is input peripheral. The input peripheral allows user input from the outside world to the computer. For example, keyboard, mouse, etc. From keyboard, mouse, we can enter information into the computer. Okay. Second one is output peripherals. The output peripherals allows information output from the computer to the outside. For example, printer, monitor, etc. And third one is input output peripheral. As the name implies, these devices both perform data input as well as data output. Let's see. The input output peripheral allows both input from outside world to the computer as well as output from computer to the outside world. For example, the touch screen or the touch display. Okay, this is the example of input output peripheral. Now let's see what is meant by interfaces. Interface is a shared boundary between two separate components of a computer system which can be used to attach two or more components to the system for communication purpose. That means in a computer we know that many components are connected with each other, and if we want to connect this device input device to CPU, then we want to connect them through the buses. Okay, and what is the interface? The interface is placed here, which operates as or which acts as the shared boundary between these two components, and this boundary is used to connect or attach these two components with each other. And this interface is available in the form of modules. Okay, there are mainly two types of interface: CPU interface and input output interface. In this unit we are going to see what is meant by input output interface. Let's see what is input output interface. The peripherals connected to a computer need special communication links for interfacing with CPU. In computer system, there are special hardware components between the CPU and peripherals to control or manage the input-output transfers. These components are called input-output interface units or module because they provide communication link between processor bus and peripherals. Okay. The input-output interface modules provide a method for transforming information between the internal system and input-output devices. Let's see what are these input-output interface module. Here is this is the input-output module, in which we can see that these modules are connected with CPU and input-output devices through the buses or through the communication links. This is the block diagram of the input output module, in which we can see that there are three types of buses: address bus, data bus, and control lines. And here are the lines available for the peripheral components. Let's see the functions of input output module. The functions of the input output module: the first one is issue of control and timing signal. Second one is communication with CPU. Next one is communication with peripheral. Next one is detection of corrects and buffering of data between CPU and peripherals. These are the general functions of input output module of the computer system. Let's see the need of input output interface, or let's see what is or why input output interface is required for transforming information between processor and peripherals. The answer is the input output interface is required because there are exist many differences between the central computer and each peripheral while transferring information. We know that in a computer system there are number of components connected with each other. That means the input components and the output components are connected with the CPU. Okay, and we know that the CPU is available in the IC form, and the input or output devices are available in the units or the hardware units. The power rating, the signals operating for input output device and the CPU are different. Hence, for that purpose, we require the input output interface module. Let's see the differences between the CPU and the input output peripheral devices. Let's see, peripherals are electromechanical and electromagnetic devices, and their manner of operation is different from the operation of CPU and memory, which are electronic devices. Therefore, a conversion signal values may be required. For example, if we connect a printer with the CPU, we know that the CPU is available in the IC form and printer is the unit or the component which operates on the higher voltages than the CPU. And in printer there is the electromechanical movement is required for rolling of paper in forward and in backward direction. Hence, the power signal for operating of CPU and printers are different. For that purpose, we require a input-output interface module for the communication between them. I hope you all understand this point. Now, the second difference is that the data transfer rate of peripherals is usually slower than the transfer rate of CPU, and consequently, a synchronization mechanism is needed. That is, we know that the operating speed of CPU is very high, but it is not necessary or not required that the peripherals data transfer rate should be equal to the CPU rate. It may be slower than the CPU's data transfer rate. Hence, in this process, we require the synchronization of data rate. The synchronization of data rate is provided by this input output interface. Hence, it is required. The third difference is that the data codes and the formats in the peripherals different from the word format in the CPU and memory. Okay, and let's see, the fourth point is the operating modes of the peripheral are different from each other and each must be controlled so as not to disturb the operation of other peripherals connected with the CPU. That means each peripheral's operating mode is different. It is possible if one peripheral is active at the same time due to its engagement with the CPU, the other peripheral may not perform its work. But this is not our proper requirement. Hence, we require the each peripheral must controlled so that this controlation of or this control of the peripheral is performed by the input output interface. Okay, these differences are resolved through input output interfaces, as input output interface or interface unit contain various components, each of which performs one or more vital functions for smooth transferring of information between CPU and peripherals. This is the need of input output interface. I hope you all understand what is peripheral input output interface and what is the need of the input output interface module. Thank you.